Okay, great. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are obviously going to be talking about games and creative computing. I'm delighted today to be joined by Sash, Natasha, and Gosha, who I will pass over to in just a minute. And just to give a little bit of an insight into how this session is going to work. So we're just going to start off by giving a little introduction to each of our institutions. Then we're going to be doing a sort of a Q&A sort of panel discussion where we can each talk about questions in regards to our institutions and in regards to the industry as a whole. And then we'll be passing over to you for any questions that you might have. Okay, so I appreciate with where you are in the world that it might seem a bit abstract to think about where we all are. So I've just popped on the screen a little map here so you can see the real sort of breadth of where we're coming from. So I'll start off then. So we are from Falmouth University, and you can see that we are right there in the southwest of the UK, almost as southwest as you can get, not quite. And we are right near the sea. So actually one of our campuses is a 5-minute walk from the beach. Sash, shall I pass over to you next to talk a bit about where Goldsmiths is?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. So yeah, Goldsmiths, as I'm sure most of you will know, is in London. And I'm sure you have a rough idea of where London is, but exactly where we are in London, because London is huge. We're in a place called Southeast London, which is southeast of that big black dot there. So we're in a place called New Cross, which is regularly described by the New York Times as the creative hub of London. Yeah, that's where we are.
Okay, great. Sorry, I was mid-taking a sip of coffee then. And Natasha, why don't you tell us a little bit about Birmingham City University, where they are?
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, Birmingham City University. So we are located, as you might guess, in Birmingham, which is the second largest city after London. We're around an hour and 20 minutes on the train north of London, right in the Midlands of the UK, so in the centre of England. And the actual university, we have a few different buildings situated across the city. Our main campus is right in the city centre, just 10 minutes walk from the main central train station, all of the shops, and our other campuses as well are located dotted around the city. So it's very accessible.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And so now what we're going to do, as I say, is we're just each going to go through and just introduce our games and creative computing courses, just a very quick overview, and then we'll go on to some questions. So Sash, I think I'm going to start with you.
Thanks very much, Rachel. And if I end up waffling on, just stop me or next slide me and I'll know to wrap it up. So I have listed 3 of our creative programs here because our Department of Computing has a whole range of programs, including some of the more scientific mathematical computer programs like computer science or business computing. But I'm going to focus very quickly on the sort of the more creative programs that we have in the Department of Computing. So first of all, our BSc in creative computing is a 3-year program, or you can do it 4 years if you want to include an industrial.
Sash frozen for everyone else, just checking.
Yeah, I think we might have lost him.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, you're back. Carry on.
Sorry. So sorry, guys. My Wi-Fi slips in and out sometimes, as you would imagine. I'm not sure where you lost me. Hopefully, I'll just start again on the BSc Creative Computing. So it's a 3-year program, but you can do it in 4 years if you like. If you'd like to choose to do an industrial placement in the field of computing. So basically, the creative computing program allows you to prepare for a technological focused work. It focuses on coding in the creative industries and essentially prepares you as a programmer for jobs in games, web, social media, mobile visual effects. Our BSc in Digital Arts Computing is a 3-year program. And this program allows you to develop your artistic work in conversation with critical studies and computing studies. So essentially on the program, what you do is you learn about fundamentals of programming and the theory behind art and technology. So you'll have the chance to develop your creative practice by making a variety of artworks, building your portfolio, and developing a series of projects that are exhibited publicly. And the last course is the BSc in Games Programming. So this is, again, a 3-year course, or it can be done in 4 years if you want to do an industrial placement in a video games or general computing field. So this program is, whether you're interested in AAA console game development or indie games, this course prepares you for a creative career in the games industry. So you develop mobile, casual, indie, AAA console games right from day one. And we harness your creativity through expanding your technical programming skills and getting to grips with software and working practices that are used commonly in the games industry. Yeah, and that's a whistle-stop tour of our programs at Goldsmiths.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks, Sash. All right, great. And now over to you, Natasha.
Thanks, Rachel. So exactly as Sash mentioned, at BCU we have a few different computer game programs that are more on the programming side within our computing faculty. So I haven't focused on those too much today, and I wanted to touch on our main Gamer Camp courses, which are the ones you can see listed on the screen here. Now, the really interesting thing about these courses is that they are 2-year fast track programs, which means that you will complete your full undergraduate degree in just 2 years instead of the normal 3, which is probably the norm in the UK and presumably in your country as well, which is really great. Obviously, it means you save a year of fees in terms of cost, and you get to move on to working even quicker, or you can fast track onto a master's if you want to. So the 3 different programs are video game design, video game development, and digital art. So the video game development course is much more of a programming course within video game. Digital art, as it sounds, is the more creative one, where you are learning more about the skills you need to develop the artwork. And the video game design kind of is a mixture between the two. It focuses more on creating digital assets and looking at 2D and 3D development. The really interesting thing about these courses as well is that on each of them you're guaranteed a placement, which takes part over the summer term after the first year, and that is in our in-house game studio. So we have a game studio within our university where you will work during the summer to gain more experience on projects. So it's a really great introduction to the industry. The courses are almost like apprenticeships. They are quite intense and more like work placements for the full 2 years. It does tend to be quite 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, in the sense of what kind of hours you're working, but it gives you a real experience of what it would be like to work in the video game industry. And during the course of the programs, you would be working alongside other team members from different courses to fully develop a game, a PlayStation game, by the end of the 2-year course. So we work with PlayStation 4 development kits, and we have backing from lots of different industry partners that I've listed on the screen here. So yeah, it's really great sort of fast track way into the industry, gain lots of experience, develop your portfolios, and by the end our graduates are extremely employable and often will go to work with one of the companies we've partnered with throughout the course.
That's great, thank you. Okay, and so I'm just going to talk a little bit about Falmouth University and our Games Academy. I should say that I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague Gosha, who not only works in the international office with me, but is also an alumna of, was it games programming that you did, Gosha?
Oh no, it was the game development with the specialism in art.
There we go. Okay, brilliant. So I'm going to give an overview, and then I think later on we go to the questions. I'm probably going to bring Gosha in a bit more to kind of talk about her experience. So yes, so this is our our Games Academy is where you can study games and creative computing. It's one of 9 departments that we have at Falmouth University. And as with Goldsmiths and BCU, you can see that we have a range of different programs on offer. You can see the full range on the right-hand side there. We have a range of Bachelor of Arts and also BSc programs available. And again, these really vary in whether the focus is more on computing or whether they're more sort of creative, and as Gosha said, that with more of a focus on art. So I think the really important thing is to look into all of them and kind of have a think about what your focus is. As you can see on this slide, we're really proud to be considered one of the top 50 game institutions in the world by Princeton Review and the 4th in Europe. And whatever course you study, you'll be creating real games and digital products every day using professional standard studios and equipment. We'll go into that a little bit later. You'll learn from tutors with experience at companies like EA Games and Square Enix, and you'll develop industry-level creative and technical skills. As a game, app or immersive content developer, you'll benefit from all of the other creative courses that we have at Falmouth University, and you'll get to work with actors in motion capture suits, artists, writers, composers, and also business experts who will help you to work out how you can market and profit from your game while you're also studying with us. The staff follow industry trends, ensuring that students are taught the latest skills and techniques required by the industry, which really increases your chance of getting a job post-graduation. We think this is demonstrated by our employability rate, with 92.1% of Games Academy students ending up in industry or in further study 1 year after graduating. But actually, maybe interestingly for you, 100% of our international students who graduated were in a job or in further study 1 year after graduating. So all of the experience and the skills and the connections that you make really, really help you to start your career. Okay, I think that was a whistle-stop tour of the Games Academy at Falmouth, and we'll go into a bit more detail later on. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we've got some pre-prepared questions that we're going to go through for each of our institutions, but I'd really encourage you, if you have any questions, do pop them in the chat, and then we can go through them at the end as well. So I think the first question that I'm going to ask, that I know is a really big question for every institution, is what facilities will students have access to? I'm trying to remember who I put here first. Sash, if you're there, do you want to talk a bit about facilities at Goldsmiths?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. So yeah, I have listed here some of the facilities that we have at Goldsmiths, and if you can, see if you can pick out the ones that I'm mentioning, because there's a picture of each of the facilities that we have at Goldsmiths on the screen, so see if you can pick them out. So first of all, we have our Hatch Labs. Now, our Hatch Labs are brand new state-of-the-art art, digital fabrication and physical computing labs, which are equipped with all the tools necessary to bring your digital designs into the physical world. So this includes having stuff like engraving lasers, laser cutters, drill presses. We also have computer labs. Now, computer labs, we have 4 dedicated computer labs, and they're kitted out with 214 iMacs, and all our machines are dual boot with Windows 10 and Mac OS on them. We also have our motion capture suite, which combines 3 technologies in a really uniquely powerful cocktail. And basically what this motion capture suite does is it captures technology and records the movement of performers and renders it into a virtual world, which is great for VR gaming. In terms of the Sonics Immersive Media Lab, this is a space designed for complete versatility. So it's a place where both students and researchers can learn to use cutting edge sound, lighting, video technologies. And essentially, it's a multimedia facility which was designed collectively by our other departments in media, computing, and theatre and performance, which is great because as a computing student, you get to mix with other departments outside of computing. So in media, in theatre, in film, and you can get a perspective of how they're using this technology and see and look at creative computing from different angles. So that multi-facility multimedia facility, sorry, is really interesting. We also have a games lab, and this is set up to showcase your work and has the latest in gaming technology. We're also currently fitting in some virtual reality specific facilities, which will allow, don't ask me the names, but it will allow for certain technologies that are used in gaming to be applied to virtual reality. We also have our Goldsmiths Digital Studio, which is a space that brings both students and artists together. The studio has several specialist soldier stations. It has basic electronic consumables, and it has hacking equipment, basically making it a perfect home for physical computing activities. And lastly, we have the St. James Hatcham, and this is a dedicated exhibition space. So this building has really beautiful stained glass windows, but also has these modern touches as well, which makes it a really cool and great exhibition space for our BSc Digital Arts Computing degree shows, which we put on at the end of every year, and also some of our MFA computational arts students put their degree shows on there. But it really showcases the students' work and allows some of that art to really come to the fore. But yeah, that's a whistle-stop tour of our facilities.
Okay, that's brilliant, thank you. And Natasha, do you want to speak a bit about the facilities with BCU?
Yes, of course. So our Gamer Camp is located within our main campus in Birmingham City Centre, which is where all of our art, design and media courses are housed. So we have a range of different softwares, equipments and tools that are all able to be used by our students, and obviously you will learn how to use them during your course if you're not familiar with the software just yet. I'm not going to go through all of the software types step by step, because I'm sure if you are aware of what they are, you will be excited that we have them on campus. But we have Maya, firstly, which is one of our 3D software tools, which we use for modelling and rendering for animation. So any students who are doing the digital art course, that will be really useful for. What else? We have a lot of these Wacom Cinetic graphics tablets that you can see in the pictures on the right, which again are for our digital art students. They also have access to all of the Adobe Creative Suites and 3D Studios too. I mentioned our PS4 development kits earlier. So this is one key element of the course, that we work on the PS4 development kits. And like I said, students on the course by the end will have developed a fully functioning PS4 game, which I think is really cool, and it adds to your portfolio once you graduate. On top of that, we have additional software tools like Unity and ZBrush and Substance Painter that I've listed on the screen here, which altogether cover the elements that you need to go and work in industry afterwards. I've also just popped on the screen a list of the companies that we are endorsed by. So these are some of the top companies in the industry, Sony, for example, and Codemasters. So yeah, that's it for BCU. Thanks, Rachel.
Okay, great, thank you. Give me 1 second, and there we go. So I'm just going to give a very broad overview of the facilities at Falmouth University, but then I am going to pass over to Gosha, who I think would be able to talk about it with a lot more expertise and definitely not mispronounce anything, which I'm a little worried I could do. But just as a sort of broad overview, so Falmouth is one of the largest dedicated game development studio spaces of any UK university. All students have access to professional standard studios, as well as a dedicated craft room, breakout spaces, and a range of industry standard software management tools and game engines. Our large game development studios are open late during term time, so that encourages a lot of time for you to work on your own projects and for teamwork. And then as well as all of the equipment that we're talking about, students also have access to weekly life drawing sessions, motion capture suites, augmented reality and mixed reality technology, 3D printers, and a bespoke robotics lab. So you can see on the screen here some of what we have on offer in more detail. But Gosha, did you want to sort of highlight anything in particular from your experience?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the most unique things in Falmouth University GA Studios, GA stands for Games Academy. If you have a look at our website, you will soon realize that there are a lot of abbreviations for all of our departments. So Games Academy is GA. And one of the uniquest things for me was the fact that in our game studio, because of its huge size, all of the students from all of the degrees work alongside each other. So that allows us to collaborate with each other a lot easier, and also to meet people from not specifically our own areas of specialism, which is so great in having those kind of friendships on your course. Just because it helps you develop your own portfolio a lot better as well. So as an artist, I could collaborate with animators or with programmers who could help me enhance my art projects, which was so great. For the game development courses or game design courses that we have at Falmouth, we use two different games engines. So one of them is Unity and the other one is Unreal Engine. We start off with the Unity engine because it's a lot easier, especially for programmers who sometimes don't have a lot of experience before they come on the courses. And Unity uses simpler coding languages, which many of you might be aware of already if you're interested in that subject area. And the Unreal Engine is a lot better for us artistic students because it enhances how our models and textures look. We also have a VR room where we can test our games or play each other games as well. We organize many testing sessions regularly for each other because we want our games to be better and better by day. Talking about games, you might be under the impression that that's the only course we offer. That's not necessarily true. There are some courses that are more focused on the graphical side of things. So, for example, the game art course is aimed at people who are not very confident within their art skills just yet. So that gives you a good opportunity to have a good introduction to the course within your first year, and as you progress through the years you gain more confidence, but you also have a lot more opportunities for cross-disciplinary collaboration. In the third year of my course as well, and that I think that is very important to mention, we all had a computer that was assigned to each of the third year students because it was the most important year at the university. And as an artist or an animator, we had a choice of dual monitors or a monitor and a Cintiq tablet. So the setup of the studio and the workspace that you have, you also have a little bit of choice in terms of how that works in the studio and what you're comfortable with. And I think in terms of the facilities and maybe the work-life study balance, that would be probably it from me. So unless there are any other specific questions, I'm happy to wrap it up and stop talking here.
All right, thanks so much, Gosha. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Yes, great. You can tell which one of us has worked in computing and which one of us hasn't. So, and I think what I'm going to do now is go to have more of a kind of panel discussion where we've got some pre-submitted questions. Then we're going to go through and I think sort of all hop in. The other thing to mention, obviously, we're talking about our specific institutions, but this is about sort of games and creative computing in general. So while there will be some similarities with other institutions, we really just recommend that you do lots of research, look into the module structure, look into assessment, look into everything like that. Okay, all right, so the first question that I've got here is all about teaching. So it's a question, what is teaching like? How practical is the programme and how creative? So I know that will vary by different programmes, but Sash, shall I go to you first? Do you want to give a bit of an overview from Goldsmiths?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of, I think I'm going to speak about Goldsmiths, but I'm going to try and speak slightly more broadly as well in terms of that divide between, I think, what a lot of institutions offer in terms of digital arts computing and bringing that fine art with computing, and then also the more sort of creative computing, games programming side of it. And I think those are kind of, I'm sure somewhere some creative computing academics are screaming out not to make that divide, but I think it's a clear kind of divide to make. And I think as a consequence, the teaching style is different in that department. So in terms of creative computing and games programming, specifically at Goldsmiths, the 3 years or the 4 years, if you take that year out in industry, is structured in year one. It's roughly about 30% scheduled learning with 70% independent learning. Now, when we say independent learning, we're talking about, you being in the workshop, laboratory sessions, you kind of doing creative work within some of the facilities that we've spoken about, and working on briefs. Scheduled learning, that 30%, is going to be a mixture of lectures, tutorials, reading within the classroom, discussion within the classroom, and so that's kind of that segmentation of how we teach you at Goldsmiths anyway. And then in second year and third year, that split kind of becomes more skewed. So in the second year, we roughly teach you about 25% scheduled learning and 75% independent learning. And then in the third year, you really do become a true independent learner. So it's about 90% independent learning and 10% scheduled learning. And then that's with the creative computing and the games programming. With the digital arts, that skewness in terms of the split between independent learning and scheduled learning is slightly more vast in terms of there is more independent learning on a digital arts computing program compared to a games programming or creative computing degree. So yeah, that's kind of roughly how it works at Goldsmiths.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I can see that at various points we're all nodding, so it sounds like there are some sort of similarities there, which is good. Yeah, Natasha, do you want to speak a little bit about teaching and sort of practical versus creativity at BCU?
Sure. Yeah, I would say, I mean, everything that Sash said, I kind of would echo. Like I mentioned before, the courses we have at BCU being 2-year courses, they are extremely practical. And like I said, they do replicate a working environment very much. So obviously we don't leave the students to fend for themselves, but it is quite a drop in the deep end to working practically for the duration of the course, so that they can get to grips with what would be expected of them in industry. So it's very much a learning whilst doing approach, which we find works really, really well, and really encourages students to try, make mistakes and sort of correct themselves in that way. So yeah, it's definitely a fully practical course for sure at BCU.
Okay, that's great, thank you. And then I think, Gosha, I'm going to pass over to you for this one, as I think you have more experience than me on what the teaching's like.
Yeah, sure. That's not a problem at all. So like all of us have said already, the courses at Falmouth are similarly to other universities very practical. There are no theory exams at all. Students learn by practicing. So what that means is they work on group projects, but also individual projects and research-based projects. So I divided them into 3 different categories. The group projects would be done with people from your course or people from other courses. So for example, in my degree, we collaborated with actors like Rachel mentioned in the presentation, but also music students to produce some audio design or voice acting and motion capture for animations in the games. But we also collaborated with people from different disciplines in our own game studio. The individual projects are focused more around your own interests and your portfolio that would then be used by you to apply for different jobs. So in first and second year, it might be quite difficult for you to know what you want to do, and that's fine. Those years you can use to explore yourself, experiment a little bit. But in your third year or fourth year, depending on which program you choose, you will be focusing on professional kind of preparing for the future modules. So what that would be is talking to your academics about what you want to do after the university, and getting help and advice from them on what your portfolio should look like, what kind of projects you should use to apply for different jobs, how to prepare a CV, and so on. And the last part are the research-based projects. So that is writing essays. That's the theoretical part of your course. You can really write about what interests you as well. So we have series of different lectures throughout the years, but also seminars to discuss the findings and learnings that we've learned about during the lectures and other theoretical classes. And we can use those to write our own kind of big theoretical projects, research-based projects. So as a very broad example from my own experience, I wrote a lot about psychology and color theories in games. Even as an artist, you know, I didn't just focus on art. I also wanted to know how that art affects the player, for example. So I wrote a lot of my essays around that area of gaming. So you can see that it can be as broad and as exciting as you want it to be, really. And the kind of last part of my answer would be about the teaching staff themselves. So all of the teaching staff at FALMFA from professional industries, they've worked in various places, whether it being AAA companies, AA, indie, freelance. There is a vast there is a vast mixture of different people with different experiences who are experts in the field and who can really help you enhance your work, but also understand what different jobs in different industries look like. So that's I will wrap it up here before I take over the whole session.
That's great. Thank you so much. And yeah, that sounds so interesting. Just personally, the whole colour theory thing, sounds fascinating. Okay, so I'm just conscious of the time that we've got less than 10 minutes left. So I think the next question that I'm going to go to is all about applying and about sort of the sort of experience that would be expected from our institutions. I know that a lot of students might be thinking, do I have to have game development experience when I apply? So Sash, what would the answer to that be for you guys?
For us, it would be you can for our creative computing program and our games programming, you don't have to have any prior qualifications in terms of that. For example, some students think, do I need maths? Do I need science? We don't actually require that in your high school diploma, depending on what. Obviously, some students will be at international schools, some students will be in local high schools. So it depends on what your educational background is. But if you're coming from an IB school or a school, for example, teaching M6 in Thailand, or the Korean system, no matter where you are, we don't require maths in that final year. What we do like to see, though, is we do like to see some sort of proficiency in maths in your earlier years. So perhaps 2 years before you reach your final year of study in your school, we want to see some evidence that you are proficient in maths, but it's not a strict requirement. The one strict requirement that we do have in our digital arts computing program, I'm sure it may be the case for others as well, but we do require a portfolio. And there is a session later on, I think, or perhaps on another recording, you can check this out as well. But we do have a portfolio requirement, and in this, what we normally ask to see is about 12 items of work, and these can be images or videos, sculpture, painting, drawing. It doesn't have to be digital art computing works. It can be anything that shows us who you are as a creative person and shows us your approach work and your ideas and thoughts. In terms of the more academic requirements, I think it's probably best to go and check out the program page, because they will really differ depending on where you are in the world. But one thing that we really do like to focus on is the personal statement. Now, when you apply, perhaps speak for everybody here. When you apply to the UK, you apply through, in most universities, you apply through UCAS at undergraduate level. And in UCAS, you submit one personal statement for 5 different options. And in this personal statement, you have to be relatively generic, because you can't say when you're applying to Goldsmiths, oh, I'm really interested, although you may well be, I'm really interested in applying for a course at Falmouth or Birmingham City University. You have to make it relatively generic. But what you can do is you can really show us, regardless of where your interest lies, your general interest in computing, in digital arts, in programming, in the general field. And what you want to do is you want to show us your experiences outside of the classroom. Show us how you've engaged with computing and what you've learned from your engagement and why that's propelled you to want to study at a high level. So yeah, the personal statement is really, really key. And one other thing is just, and I'll pass on to my other colleagues, is just don't just list things that you've done. Talk about them, expand on them, and say what you've learned and what's interested you about that.
That's great, thank you. I think that's some really, really good general advice, as you say, sort of across the board. So yeah, I am just conscious that we've only got a few minutes left. So Natasha, do you have anything to add to that for Birmingham City University in terms of entry requirements and application, things like that?
No, I mean, it's pretty much the same. Like Sash, we don't require any previous knowledge of computing or even any specific subjects at your school level. We would require a portfolio from if you were applying for one of the arts creative courses, and we do ask all of our applicants to sit an online test when they apply, just to check your reasoning skills and your problem solving, and just make sure you're suitable for the course, because they're quite competitive. But no, in general, the personal statement is just to show your passion. So that's probably the key thing we're looking at, really.
Okay, that's brilliant, thank you. And Gosha, is there anything that you want to add from your experience of applying our entry requirements?
Yeah, so very similar to the 2 other universities. You don't have to have any previous experience. For the more artistic routes, you would need a portfolio, and for the more programming routes, so there are a couple of degrees such as robotics and computing for games, so more scientific ones, where you might have to have a maths grade, which is equivalent to GCSE level. And GCSE is a qualification in the UK. So if you're not sure how that applies to you and your own qualifications, it's always good to check with the university that you apply to, just to make sure that you know all of the requirements. And in addition to the portfolio, personal statement, and all of the other important things that people have mentioned already, we do have an interview at Falmouth. So once your portfolio is reviewed, once we receive your application, we would invite you to an interview where you can talk more about your passion, your previous experiences, and so on. And that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's great. So I mean, hopefully this has given you a good overview of what to expect if you were to study a games or creative computing degree. Obviously, we're talking specifically about our institutions, but as we've said, there's a lot of similarities. So hopefully this gives you a bit of an overview of what you could expect and what your experience should be when applying. We have come to the end of the session, so I'm just going to ask my colleagues, is there anything in addition that you want to say, or have you got any other sessions coming up this week that you want to talk about?
I'm about to head off now to my BCU session, so if anyone wants to join me there, you are more than welcome. But thanks to everyone who has watched with us today, and I hope you found it useful.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll also be doing a session on portfolio requirements across all the different creative programs. So if you want to find out more, tune in. I think it's on Thursday. But thanks a lot, everyone.
All right, thanks so much, everyone. And we've got our session tomorrow at 10 o'clock UK time, so do join us then. And you can find all of our contact details in the email. So do take a look there and do get in touch. And hopefully we might see some of you in the future. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.